Hello. All right. Kevin and I are here to talk about our experience on KoTH this past ISTS. It was definitely a fun experience, and we are here to talk about it. So let's get into it. Well, who am I? I think all of you know who I am. I'm Lucas Peters. I'm a third year CSEC. I am also a deaf with cochlear implants. And I'm also was the KoTH co-lead for this past ISTS, and I'm also on Ops. People also call me Discord mod for whatever reason.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a second year cybersecurity student from New Haven.
Turn it on.
Oop. All right, let's just start again. Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a second year cybersecurity student here. I'm originally from New Haven, but obviously here for school. I'm a black team enjoyer. Just got into that this year. Uh, I dabble in networking and more recently ops. Uh, if you know me, you know that at a given time I only have two fully functioning brain cells. I'm a little bit of a kitty cat connoisseur, shown by my little cat, Abby. And, you know, as of recently, I've become Windows #1 op. So just to get started, uh, what is King of the Hill, or KoTH? Well, KoTH is King of the Hill. It's a mixture of red and blue teaming, uh, where where teams compete to control target systems and services set up on vulnerable boxes. Once they get access, it is their goal to maintain control of the systems and regain control when they're inevitably lost. This is shown in the attack and defense life cycle.
And so there are these each individual boxes that the teams can compete for. Each of these boxes has like an interesting vulnerability that you can use exploits on. And they shouldn't be too difficult. Because in the end, you want the teams to be able to claim the boxes, be the king of the box. Um, some of these exploits and vulnerabilities are like common and uncommon you see in the wild. We're gonna talk more about the vulnerabilities that we use for this past competition. Um, and then there are some vulnerabilities that are like custom, but there are also like some vulnerabilities that can be like automated using exploited automated using Metasploit.
So when you're thinking about KoTH, the first thing you have to think about is research and design. So the first thing you have to do is kind of define your objective. What services and misconfigurations are you going to be doing? Then you got to go find them. We primarily used ExploitDB and VulnHub for this, just to find some of the exploits that we used throughout the competition. Next, you got to choose an operating system. It's very much Linux or Windows. That's your two choices that you get. And then once you get that, you get to select your attack vectors. So the actual exploits that you'll be doing. Uh, this is usually web exploits. You got your remote code execution, your directory traversal, and all the other fun things that you can use to make competitors cry a little bit. Uh, if you're someone like Chase, you'll go and do 0 days, really make competitors cry. And then you also have to look at privilege escalation. And if you want to set up something fun, set up some red herring vulnerabilities.
Meaning like it's a fake vulnerability. It's just there to waste time for the competitors.
So once you get your objective set out, then you go into your development. So the first thing that you got to know is knowing your audience. These are usually competitors that have either a very in-depth understanding or no understanding at all. It's not usually in the middle. Uh, so when you have to think about that, you have to know the audience and then build around that audience. So when I was going through my development, I had the pitfall of thinking way too big, and that was a really big downfall as it led into a lot of issues down the road. So one of the biggest things that if you're coming into KoTH is and building these things is starting small and getting stuff operational, working and testing on it, and then building up and creating something bigger. Another big issue is pigeonholing yourself, spending way too much time on something that is barely like operational or just does not work at all. And I found myself working on stuff way too much, and it was a very big downside. Next, once you actually have stuff that is working, test it. For the love of God, please test it. It doesn't matter if you're making a small change or something that is big, test everything because everything will break at one point, and it's better to find that and catch that early than have to deal with it during the time of competition. And lastly, ask for assistance. You know, I came in knowing barely anything about KoTH, and I wanted to do everything by myself. And the reality of that is it just does not work. You know, getting a collaborative like environment where you're working in a team space is always great, and KoTH is a big factor of that because it is so collaborative. So asking for assistance and getting multiple minds on issues that you are having is good. And if you both are all confused, at least that confusion will be fun. Throughout this like development, we have to ask a few questions to ourselves of how do we balance the skill and fairness for competitors. We don't want things to be way too challenging so things are going over their heads, but you want it to be challenging enough where they're having an experience where they have to put in the work and effort to get these boxes. After that, you have to plan for the unintended persistence that these teams will have. You have teams that don't know anything about King of the Hill, and then teams that will absolutely dominate the competition. And usually those teams, once they get control of the boxes, will do things that make it really, really hard for the teams that know barely anything to get onto those boxes, which isn't that fun. It becomes a game of domination, and we want every competitor to have a chance to engage with KoTH. And so that kind of ties into how do we make KoTH as engaging as possible for competitors?
And since when you're done developing your boxes, we want to deploy it. We want to be able to make it so the competitors can reach the teams. Um, so we had a very tight schedule. Um, things eventually got together like a few days before the competition started, so we kept like running around making getting the boxes transferred onto like other like a crab project on OpenStack, and we wanted like snapshot these boxes quickly as possible so we can quickly test them before messing with them, because we want to have these boxes out there ready for teams and like in a good fashion manner. So that involved a lot of testing on these boxes, like making sure the services started properly, because you don't want the teams scanning the box and then just not see the service up and running. That would be very awkward, and that'll be just like a waste of time. And then we also had to deploy some Scoreify service and a binary, because how else are we gonna reach these score these boxes? Um, and then we also had to do deploy logging. Login took some difficulty as there was like a different environment rather than the whole competition. So it was a new experience for the login team as well as us. Because I don't think we didn't do login in the past years. So this was definitely like one of the first times we have done this. Um, yeah. And of course, so while going back to scoring, this is entirely new system that we used this year. Last year it was entirely new system as well, but we're hoping to stick with this one for next year and the years to come. We used Crescent King last year. It was made from by Jason Howe. It was made in Python and Flask. You can see in the first screenshot. This is all squares. Um, excuse me. You would claim the hill by just one executable that is on the this box. Simple enough, but because the rest of the competition was using Scorify, we decided to switch to like have the KoTH be scored by Scorify as well, so we can centralize all scoring. This did bring some difficulty as well. We will admit that. But how did it work? We just had like a text file that the Scorify service would be reading. If the team put their team ID in it, Scorify will start scoring that box for that team. Um, Overall, it was a lot easier to manage. And I would like to shout out to Max Fusco for working on this integration into Scorify for like past like 4 weeks before the competition. He's been up and down, like up and grinding on this just every day for the 4 weeks. So of course some issues did arise since it's entirely a new system that we use for KoTH scoring, but we are working on getting those issues fixed, and it was a very fun experience overall.
And the KoTH 2025 deploy was an absolute success. Not really. Like everything else, we ran into a lot of issues and challenges, especially the week and day of the competition. And yeah, it was a little bit of a train wreck. We'll put it that way.
But it was fun.
It was absolutely fun. So let's kind of talk about those challenges. So a lot of the challenges that we kind of had were due to OpenStack and Scorify. One of the biggest things that we ran into was Windows disk failure, which, God, it was absolutely horrible. The box that me and one of my other teammates was working on, the night of competition, just got deleted. Everything that we worked on, 2 months of progress, gone because it was getting moved over so that we could fully test it. So we had to rebuild that entire box, and one night we spent the entire night, as shown up here. I was fast asleep in Global Village conference room because I was not expecting this to happen, but it kind of sets the precedent that you have to plan for the worst. And that is a lot of the biggest things that you will experience, not just on KoTH, but just in general, that you'll run into unexpected challenges, and you'll have to be able to overcome them and adapt quickly. Another thing is the internal and external network. We found out that, what was it, day 2? That there was no internal network. The bridge that was supposed to be there just did not exist. So any competitor that was on the external network could also just ping and see the internal network.
For context, I forgot we should have explained this, but external, there were like 4 external boxes, 2 internal boxes. The teams were supposed to reach the internal boxes by exploiting the external boxes first, and then they will be able to reach the internal. The internal was not supposed to be reachable from outside. It was only reachable through external boxes.
Yeah. Besides that, we also had some missing necessities. Lucas, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So in order to make Scorify work, you have to do like some connections, like having a host, correct host file, and then having a correct DNS lines. Those were just missing from the boxes for some reason, even though it should have been there in first place. So these issues were just like making the Scorify not work. And we had to like fix it on the day of the comp as well, in middle of the comp as well. Some teams like when they did have access to the box, they just fixed it themselves. So I'll give it to them for that.
Yeah, and then last for that section, we have issues with DNS. I don't know a lot about what was happening, but it sounded like DNS just kind of bricked itself during the middle of day 1, and that had a lot of issues for KoTH and infrastructure and just the whole entire Black team in general. Besides that, for the KoTH, especially, we had a lot of issues with vulnerabilities just not working as intended. This was primarily shown on 2 of our boxes, Plant Shop and Data Center. Plant Shop had issues with MySQL, which didn't have a shell like configured correctly, so teams could just escape the confines of their cell. So we had to send Chase after them to go police them. It also had issues with SMTPD, which was supposed to allow any team to get access to it and have multiple teams be able to connect and do their vulnerability testing at the same time, but it only allowed one team to on the service at a time, which honestly, kind of a skill issue. Just get on faster, you know. You can't really do anything about that. And then for data center, there was a lot of issues with initial access. We found out that the web server that was holding the unprivileged users' information that teams could use to remote desktop onto the Windows box didn't save the changes that were pushed that would allow it to be seen. So the web server was just not up and operational. So nobody could get on the Windows box the entirety of day one, which was a big problem. And then last but not least, a lot of feedback that we got from the teams was the barrier of entry kind of felt too high. It's a problem that I think is going to be like apparent, like regardless of what we're doing. But it felt like a few teams had a lot of domination within the comp, and were just controlling the boxes for long periods of times, which just didn't give teams that wanted to try this the ability to.
I do would like to say is a lot more teams did have a like contribution to the KoTH competition. There was a lot more teams that did play and that they were able to claim a hill. So I say that was a success, much better than last year. Whereas it was just like 2 teams playing, and then only 1 team like claiming it. Or yeah. And then another thing I want to talk about. This was my first comp where I was the lead for. This involved like actually having to deploy boxes and making sure everything was running. As I was transferring the box away from your personal project onto the King of the Hill project on OpenStack, I'm gonna blame it on the excuse of running low on sleep that day, but I was cleaning up like excess instances before the comp started to make sure no teams could reach those excess instances that we had for testing. I accidentally deleted the instance that Kevin and Nishka were all working on. Yeah, that was a fun time. But we got saved that by the like detached volume that was connected to it before I deleted that instance, and I was able to make another instance out of that volume, and everything was still there. And thank God they did not have to spend another sleepless night.
That would have sucked.
Yeah.
But that leads kind of to the key takeaways that we have. I think the biggest thing is learning how to play hard yet fair. Setting up things that are difficult and challenging, but rewarding both for us as the operations team and for competitors to actually get access to these box is the biggest thing. I think everybody on our team that had a box popped can confidently say that that's probably the most rewarding experience, seeing that all your work that you've put together has come to fruition as a team actually gets access and is working on getting scoring and securing those boxes. And for those who don't, it sucks, but you know it's something you have to deal with. And the other big takeaway that I have is that good documentation is everything. I mean everything. Being able to document stuff in a way that both you and someone who has no clue what is going on can understand is it's a blessing in disguise. It was the reason why I was able to get my box up and operational again in one night. And the reason why a lot of the things that we had trouble during the comp, we're able to look at and say, okay, this might be the reason why things are being misconfigured, and we can fix them moving forward. So why be a part of KoTH? We're kind of the competitive sleeper agents. A lot of the teams don't really realize how much score goes into KoTH and how much that impacts their final score. But I think the biggest thing as a team is the flexibility to be creative. We're creating custom tailored challenges for teams that can use to exploit them. And it, in a way, it builds a whole new mindset, a purple team mindset, where you are looking at it both from a attacking and defending perspective. And with that, you get a lot of practical hands-on experience. You have the ability to test and work under pressure, high stress, high stakes, but high reward. And your challenges, it really challenges your current problem solving and critical thinking skills. You have to learn and be able to adapt on the fly and roll with the punches. But with that, you have a big team that is consistently collaborating in these high stress environments and working on something that is just bigger than one box, bigger than one thing, and that extends to the entirety of Black Team. We're working on creating competition that is designed for other teams to get a rewarding and knowledgeable experience throughout that.
And you get to have like during the competition, you get to experience some really good feelings. During the competition, we were like it was in the morning, like the first hour, we were just waiting for one of our boxes to get popped. Um, like I just happened to glance at the scoreboard, and then I just see the box go from red to green. I was like, "Wow, it happened!" It was a lot more excited than that, but you get the idea. It's something really hard to explain, but that was such a cool experience, and it was something like 2 months of work all coming together that day and seeing it work. We all celebrated, gave each other high fives, and then immediately got back to work because it was not over. But I don't think you can really get that experience anywhere else, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a very euphoric moment. And last but not least, KoTH has 100% return on investment. You're going to get a lot of rewarding experiences, and if you're not, you get your money back guaranteed.
Yes.
Is there any questions? Yes, Will?
What was the last part? Okay. What was my what's my favorite KoTH box? Okay, this is gonna be biased because it's my box. It was my box. Oh, okay. So it can't be my box. Dang.
Choose your favorite child wisely.
Uh, honestly, I gotta say Chase, because the a lot of work you put into that, and seeing how it worked overall, and how I got to see the team actually exploit that box. That was really cool. Um, yeah.
He's saying he doesn't love farmers market well. Any other questions?